Okay, today in this section, we're going to talk about schools, churches, and cemeteries. And we'll talk about schools for a few minutes and a 1 minute and 45 seconds. And then we'll go visit some of the churches and cemeteries. The young scholars of Rozelle Town in the Hatchet Creek community, were served by 6 schools over the years. The first school was the Bethune School. And when I asked about that back in the 70s, the old heads in the community really didn't know too much about it, except that there had been a school that existed maybe in the 1840s and up into the early 1850s called the Bethune School. And I asked my friend Claude, the artificial intelligence, and he said that the name Bethune was a French to Scotch name, and some of the early settlers in here were Scotch. So apparently they came in and established the first school. If you go to Marvin's Chapel Church and look north down Persimmon Lane, the dirt road, excuse me, if you go a couple of miles down there to the creek over on Spot Little's place, the school was probably somewhere in there, and the Bethunes had settled there real early. Maybe even came in with the Bulls and the Pattersons and the Levies and the Smiths. And but that was the first school. We don't know much about it, and nobody really knew where it was. 2 schools were going on at the same time in the maybe late 1850s and 1860s. And they were the Rozelle School right there in Rozelle Town, and it was a small, you can still see the foundation, a small little log cabin with a rock fireplace, and some of those rocks out of that fireplace are incorporated in my chimney. And so the Rozelle School was a little small school, and north on the Sockapatoy Road, a couple of miles, was the Shiloh School. And at Shiloh, there was a Shiloh Primitive Baptist Church that we'll talk about, and Shiloh School, and there's a Shiloh Primitive Baptist Church cemetery that we'll go visit. And in 1861, when Grandpa John Rozelle had volunteered with the first regiment to be called up in the Confederate Army. He rode his horse from Rozelle Town to Shiloh School to say goodbye to his sweetheart, Elizabeth Catherine Chandler. And he said he was going off to fight the Yankees, and that if he made it back, he wanted her to be his bride. And he made it back. And that we're descended from that union. So that when I go up there, that's the main reason I go up there, is to look around and see if I can see the tree that John may have tied his horse to when he said goodbye to Grandma Lizzie Chandler. Okay. Now, both of those schools, the Shiloh Primitive Baptist School was poorly built, and the Rozelle School was poorly built, cold in the winter when they had classes. And so the people got together and they said, let's tear those 2 schools down and build a new school, a Union School. And they named it the Union School. And it looked like this. Okay, it is located today at the junction of Highway 148, Bill Nichols Scenic Highway, and County Road 7. If you head north on County Road 7 about a half a mile and look towards the mountain to your left, you can still see the remnants of that old school. And here's a picture of that. Okay, during the later days of the Union School, and immediately after that, there was also the Sumner School. And if you go back to Marvin Chapel Church and look back east towards Millerville, maybe a mile or two that way, they just say, I'd say, where is the Sumner School? It's down that way, north. But the Sumner School served the people of Hatchet Creek community, some of them, but people from Shady Grove also came to the Sumner School. And so it's getting, time's passing on now, and they thought they needed a much better school. So the last school in the community was the Marvin Chapel School. And I don't know why I don't have a picture of it. It was located about 100 yards if you go to Brother Huron Patterson's house, Cotton Patterson's house, and look north across Highway 148, about an eighth of a mile up there's the old schoolhouse acre. And that's where the Marvin Chapel School was. And some of the people that I knew, the old people that I knew, went to school there. Virgil Chandler and Bill Bell, some of them went to school at that school. So after the Marvin Chapel School, now the roads are improved and they've got buses. So the next school, they bused everybody in Hatchet Creek community, Rozelle Town. They went to Millerville, and they went to the Millerville Elementary School where I taught, and Bibb Graves High School. And that was a wonderful school that lasted a long time. But then these wise old heads in Ashland decided that we needed to stop Bibb Graves High School that had produced so many PhDs and doctors and lawyers. And they now have a consolidated school between Ashland and Lineville. And I think they have elementary schools, one in Ashland and one in Lineville. I don't keep up with that as much as I should. So that's the end of the school section. And now let's get out and go check on these churches. Rozelle's are traditionally Methodist and attended services to begin with in a Methodist church that was a log structure, and it was east of here towards Millerville, but maybe a mile down there, probably close to where the elusive Sumner School was. You would ask the people, where was the first Marvin Chapel Church? And they would say, well, it was just down there east of here. And where was Sumner School? Well, it was east of here, so they were both that away, towards Millerville. In 1883, a modern structure was built. And it burned in 1966 and was rebuilt with the current Marvin's Chapel Church that you see right here. And today, the work and support of the Woods family is what keeps this church going. Marvin Chapel Church, it's not Marvin's plural, it's Marvin Chapel Church, is kept going and is in a good a shape as it is, and the cemetery taken care of, all thanks to they used to say the Woods kids, but they're all getting about as old as I am. I think O'Neill's older than I am. The citizens of Rozelle Town and the Hatchet Creek community didn't limit themselves to one denomination. The churches would have services, most of them once a month or twice a month. And the Rozelles and Chandlers, they didn't want to just go to church once a month or twice a month, so they would visit all the other churches around. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they'd hook up their wagon and visit all around to the other churches. South of Rozelle Town on the Sockapatoy Road, you go a little ways down there to Brownsville, and there's a Brownsville Presbyterian Church. And that would really be edifying for these Rozelles and Chandlers to mingle with those wise and studious Presbyterians who had a better grasp of the world maybe than some of us who just down there dirt farming all the time. And then just north of, we're blessed with a lot of cars coming through on 148. Just north of Rozelle Town on the Sockapatoy Road, now the County Road 7, is the Shiloh Primitive Baptist Church that we talked about in the last section. The Shiloh Primitive Baptist Church and school and cemetery. And we'll talk about the cemetery a little bit later. And I know that the Rozelles enjoyed going, hearing the lively Primitive Baptist sermons, but also the Fa Sol La singing would really be entertaining and uplifting. Now, farther north on the Sockapatoy Road to what Eddie Rozelle called the, that's not the Sockapatoy, come back to me. All right, on the Sockapatoy Road north is what Eddie Rozelle called the northern boundary of the Hatchet Creek community, the Hatchet Creek Missionary Baptist Church. And that's always been a real strong church. And it was built, according to Dud Cobb, to the best of his recollection, around 1840. And also north of Rozelle Town and east of the Sockapatoy Road was Marvin's Chapel's sister church, the Bethlehem Methodist Church. And we have relatives buried there. And usually Marvin Chapel Church and Bethlehem Church shared a preacher. And so people from this church, it was very easy for them just to go up to Bethlehem Church and support them sometimes. And even as, within the last 10 years, I've seen people come from Bethlehem Church to visit Marvin Chapel Church to support the church. So that rich mix of theology and entertainment made the day of rest something special for the old residents of Rozelle Town. Now, while we're on churches, I want to mention that my grandfather, Edward Rozelle, from here at Rozelle Town, met my grandmother, Daisy Black, who was from Ashland at that time, at the Millerville Baptist Church. So churches were, it was good for your soul, but it was also good for your social life. Okay. Well, the old houses and stores are all gone. the school, the cotton gin, the blacksmith shop, the jackass, the railroad, they're all disappeared. Rozelle Town is mighty quiet nowadays, but the Rozelle and Chandler Cemetery is still open and thriving and ready for business. The sturdy monuments that you can see, I'm trying to learn to do this darn selfie stick. These sturdy monuments are over the tombs of many of my ancestors. And right here, and let's see if I can do this. Is my great-great-grandfather, Enoch Rozelle. I'm standing on his grave right now. Sorry, Enoch. 1811 to 1891. He was the first Rozelle to live here, and he's buried here. And his wife, Mary Sawyer, died soon after they were here, and all the children were almost grown, and she's buried over at Plantersville in Talladega County in the Armbruster Cemetery. And I wish she was over here, but she's not, so let's see. Now, how am I gonna do this? Probably gonna fall down, you'll get to see it. Let's get over here to Enoch's son, John Wesley Rozelle is buried here. I don't think you can see that. And his wife, Elizabeth Catherine Chandler Rozelle, is buried right there. Now, great Grandpa Mordecai Chandler, he's not buried here. He's buried up at Chandler Springs, and there's a cemetery up there that if you go to Chandler Springs, you can just look, you'll see a cemetery, and there's some rocks, two big rock tombs, and he's buried in one of those. But his son, Thomas Banks Chandler, is buried down right into one of those cemeteries. Okay, my John's son, Edward Rozelle, is buried in Ashland at the Ashland City Cemetery, and my grandmother, Daisy Black Rozelle, is buried there with him, as is Albert Lee Rozelle and Margie Rozelle, my uncle and aunt. Okay, so if I do this, I'm walking, but you can't see where we're going, you can see where we've been. Now these stones, there's nobody buried there. These are memorial tombstones, and the sons of the Confederacy came in, and these Confederate soldiers, Rozelle's and Chandler's, were buried, died in the war, most of them, and they're buried at some battlefield. And there's Uncle Milton, Irvin Thompson and Mutt Thompson, named after him. Samuel T. Rozelle, Knox Cavalry, and then there's John L. Chandler, 5th Alabama Battalion, and then James T. Chandler. He was a camp instructor, so he was like a drill sergeant, I guess. Now, my father, Hugh Edward Rozelle, is buried. Lord have mercy, there goes 5 deer running across the pasture. Hugh Edward Rozelle is buried down in Atmore, Alabama, and my mother at the city cemetery. But as you can see, right here, can you see that? I'm buried right here. I don't know if I'm getting that right or not. Eddie Rozelle. Now, my wife, I'm so tickled that I have my stone here. I don't know if you ever got to see that or not, but my wife, Ruth, is not nearly as pleased as I am with our stone here. We're going to be cremated, and we'll put a few little thimble full of ashes here, and then we can take the rest of them and put them wherever we want them. So my children are non-committal. I hadn't heard where they want to be buried. They're not thinking along those lines yet. So I thought we may be the last, this may be the last stone, but my cousin Gary Chandler was visiting a couple of months ago, and he says that he wants to be buried here. So there's Rozelle Chandler Cemetery. Rozelle Town may not be doing much, but the cemetery is still thriving. Now, I have a speculation, but it's a strong speculation, that you remember old William Bull that was killed here on the farm in the 1830s. I checked, and he is not buried at the Brownsville Cemetery, and the Brownsville Presbyterian Church had another earlier, smaller cemetery, and I checked way back in the 70s, but I couldn't find any notation of where he was buried at a formal cemetery. So my guess, and the most logical thing is he was buried, he's murdered here on the farm, and he was buried here on the farm in this cemetery. So I think, see if I can aim it right. If you look, the highest place in the cemetery is right in there, and there's no tombstone there. So those old Rozelles knew that there was a grave here, and I suspect that William Bull was buried right here in the Rozelle Chandler and Bull Cemetery. And if I was just a little more sure, I'd put a stone right there, but I'm almost positive. Now, south on the Sockapatoy Road is the well-maintained Brownsville Presbyterian Cemetery, and if you can have a beautiful cemetery, that and the church and the arbor behind it, that is a beautiful place. I hope nothing ever happens to it. And let's see, and north, just off the Sockapatoy Road, if you turn left on Dyson Road, you'll go back to what we keep talking about, the Shiloh Primitive Baptist Church Cemetery. And my friend Dud Cobb and I were visiting there recently, and I took a few pictures that I'll show you. And the cemetery is out in the woods. Not many people know where it is, and it was cleaned off. And we couldn't figure out who in the world came back in here and cleaned off this old cemetery. Well, after a little checking, I found out that it was this guy. Cotton Patterson. Took a little time, went back, cleaned off a cemetery that nobody's paying any attention to. Now, that's a real hero for you, isn't it? Now, we also have relatives buried up at the Bethlehem Methodist Church. It's north of here, and at the Bethlehem Church, naturally. We have a great aunt buried there. But when it comes to cemeteries, what we think of first is the Rozelle Chandler Cemetery, this cemetery. And then we think of Marvin Chapel Cemetery at the Marvin Chapel Methodist Church, where I have an aunt that's buried there. And a lot of family friends, Chandlers, are buried there. Now, this cemetery it doesn't just clean itself off. When I first moved here, it was a big deal right around homecoming at the Methodist Church, Marvin Chapel Church. All Roselle's and Chandlers would convene over here, and we'd load. Everybody had lawnmowers and sling blades. That's kind of before weed eaters, but they had sling blades and hoes, and everybody would get in here and clean this cemetery off. And it'd take an hour or two to clean it off, but we had a crew. Now, I can't remember them all, but it was Virgil Chandler and Bill Bell and Billy Chandler and Gary Chandler and me. And then there was another cousin. Gary might remember his name. He was like Bill Bell and Billy and Virgil's age. And we'd all get in here and clean the cemetery off and sometimes eat a watermelon after we got through. But then everybody died. And then I found it was just me. I was coming over here by myself. I bring my tractor and get what I could with the tractor, and then I'd have to dig around, and I was kind of whining about that to Gene, and then Gene came in and he got a lot of work done for me. He'd come over here with his riding lawnmower and weed eaters and things. Well, Gene up and died on me. So then it's back to me cleaning the cemetery off by myself. Now all I had to do is ask Gary Chandler, but I didn't want to. I'd bother him, and I didn't know when I'd be able to come. So I was cleaning it off by myself again. But then a wonderful miracle happened. Cousin Dale Burns moved here, and he lives right here on the farm in Rozelle Town. And after I told him, I just mentioned it to him one time that I came over here and cleaned the cemetery. I came back over here, and I don't know what kind of machine he brought in here, but when I was so relieved, I came in here and he would have gotten it all, but he ran into some yellow jackets, I think. But he's been back since, so he's a worker. So I think I've got a lot of help now on cleaning the Rozelle and Chandler Cemetery. And then maybe one of these days my kids will be close enough that they can come and help. And Gene's daughters and their husbands, they want to help, but I hate to pin them down and tell them to come on a certain day. I never know when I'll be able to be here. So what I usually try to do is just come over and peck at it and get it done. And now with Dale, we'll probably be able to keep the Rozelle Chandler Cemetery in tip-top shape, especially since I'm buried right back there. Okay, we got one more cemetery to discuss, and then that'll be the end of the Rozelle Town saga. All right, I hope that worked out with this selfie. All right. Okay, we're still in Rozelle Town, and we're down on the Uncle Frank farm at our little catfish pond. And it's mighty pretty this time of year. I wish the sky was blue, so it'd look a little better for you. Now, there's another cemetery that served our community, the Springhill Cemetery. The cemetery is located on the west side of the cutoff road between Bull Gap and East Mill Road. And I almost hate to say where it is. Dud Cobb and I went over there, or he had been over there, and they'd found somebody had gone back and tried to dig up one of those graves. And so I hope nobody sees this. That was some teenager. Anybody interested in history would not do a thing like that. So if you want to go see it, it's on the cutoff road. And it is in this cemetery where the black citizens of Rozelle Town and Hatchet Creek community are buried. And according to a cemetery survey reported by Chat, that's that artificial intelligence, Chat said there's over 200 people buried in that cemetery. And you look around and you can't see that many tombstones, but you can see places that are likely spots for a grave. Now, there was a Springhill Missionary Baptist Church there and the cemetery. And one thing I read also said that there was a school back there, Springhill School. And there was a beloved family who lived in Rozelle Town. And it was the Frank and Charlotte Goodgang family. And my daddy told me about when they would visit from Ashland and they'd come here in the wagon, and later on in the Model T, they'd get to Rozelle Town and the kids would jump off the wagon and run to Aunt Charlotte's house. She was living in the old house that William Bull built, the two-story house, and that Enoch had lived in, and then the later Rozelles, Mordecai Chandler had lived in that house too, and then Enoch, and so it was a beloved home, but they had Frank and Charlotte Goodgang living there, and the kids would always want to go stay with Aunt Charlotte. She loved children, and for sure there's more than one story about how everybody wanted to go visit Aunt Charlotte, and how everything was always perfect in there, and she had cookies, and everybody wanted to stay there. So they'd have to, it's kind of sad, now you go up to the house and go see your grandpa and grandma and your aunt and uncle. Oh, can't we stay at Aunt Charlotte's house? That's kind of sad. Now, there are two similar stories about Charlotte's husband, Frank, and the Ku Klux Klan. And I'm going to tell you the story that my father told me. One day, 4 Ku Klux Klanners came riding into Rozelle Town. They weren't wearing their robes, but they were known to be Ku Kluxers. And they asked my great-grandfather, John, about where Frank Goodgang was. And John said, well, what do you want to see him for? And they said that it had been reported that he was acting uppity. Well, old John had fought in the Civil War, and he had been in the artillery. He'd been captured twice, and he'd been held in the infamous Camp Butler. And these 4 men did not intimidate him at all. So John said to them, you come riding in here on a weekday when you should be working. Your horses are thin and unkept. Your clothes are filthy. And you want to threaten Frank Goodgang, a good, hard-working man? Turn your horses around and get out of here. Get out of Rozelle Town. That's the story that my daddy told me. Frank and Charlotte Goodgang are buried in the Springhill Cemetery. And one of their 12 children, and maybe more, got through hard work, got a good education. And he later became the pastor of Birmingham's largest black church and was very, very successful. Eddie Rozelle tells a story in his My Folks and Fields about them coming back in a fancy Surrey to visit one time. And then after he died, his son, what we hear, took over the church, and he was also successful. And so all the Rozelles were real proud of the Goodgangs. They went further than a lot of the Rozelles did. And there's another tombstone in the Springhill Cemetery that's famous. And people often refer to that cemetery as that cemetery in the National Forest with the grave of the man who lived in 3 centuries. The name on the stone is Virgil Patterson, born in 1795 and died in 1905. Cotton Patterson assures me that he went by the name of Alfred. That's what the Pattersons called him, Alfred Patterson. Alfred was a slave that was owned by the Pattersons when they came from North Carolina. When the Civil War ended, Alfred was 70 years old and he gained his freedom. So according to the Pattersons, I think it was Roy that told me that Alfred went off for a while. And he was gone for a month or so. Well, then one day he comes walking back up, and he stayed there with the only people that he had ever known. He stayed for the rest of his life. And when he died, it was the Pattersons who bought his headstone. And you can look at this headstone, and it's really as nice as some of the Pattersons' headstones. When I went to visit the cemetery, Virgil's grave was all cleaned off. And just like at Shiloh, some mystery person, some mystery heroes going around cleaning graves. Well, I checked, and guess who it was? Cotton Patterson had been over there to clean Virgil Patterson's grave, a person he had never seen. He'd just heard the stories about it. Okay, so that's kind of a tour of our cemeteries. The Springhill Cemetery really had better stories than the Rozelle's and Chandler Cemetery or the other church cemetery. All right, let's see if I can get up. Oh!